I'm Nikki and welcome to the Preppy Possum. Today I'm going to lead you step by step through a painting. All right, let's paint some baby turtles. So let's start out by grabbing a huge brush and drying it off. And let's grab mostly like a off-white. You can have like a little bit of like a caramel with it or a tan, but mostly like a off-white, a good beach color. And I'm just gonna skip down from the top of the canvas at least like 5 or 6 inches from that top left. And I'm just gonna do like a bumpy line that kind of leans down, because that's gonna be kind of where the beach and the wave hits, where the wave crashes onto the beach. And then once you get your bumpy line, then we're just gonna fill in all below it. So just grab a lot of paint and go for it. And it doesn't matter if it's a little streaky, because that's kind of, you know, a beach is going to look a little streaky. So just kind of go for it any which way. All right. And make sure you take it like all the way to the bottom. So underneath your little bumpy line, and then all the way to the bottom. And then just hang on to that big brush once you get it a little layer on there. So we have a layer all through our sand. Now let's just kind of wipe that brush off. So you don't have to rinse it out. I'm not a big rinser just because it gets water in your brush. So just kind of wipe it off, and let's grab some dark blue, so like a navy. And we're gonna skip up to the very top, and we're just gonna do like the top few inches, which I'm gonna let it like lean down a little bit more on the right-hand side, because that's kind of how my wave is crashing. And don't worry that it's a little thin and streaky, because we'll come back and kind of hit it a little bit more in a second. But we're gonna get some dark up there at the top, then just grab some turquoise. So like, you know, not a navy, but like a next to darkest kind of blue. And we're just gonna throw a little bit of turquoise kind of right underneath the navy. You can kind of do some horizontal streaks right there where they touch, just to kind of blend it a little bit. And then grab some of the turquoise and the pool blue together. And I'm not gonna take it all the way down to the beach, because I'm actually gonna throw like some froth there, some ocean foam. So this is just to kind of get us a layer on our water. All right. So you have a layer up through the top part. Don't worry about what it looks like, because we'll come back and add to it. But once you have that, then just kind of wipe off your extra and chunk that one in the water, and we're just gonna let it dry for just a second. Let's see, let's go ahead and start by putting in like another layer on our beach probably. So let's grab that huge brush and dry it off. And I'm gonna grab a little bit more of that off-white and caramel. And I'm just gonna throw like a second layer on there just while it's dry. Which I don't have to hit all of it, but just anywhere where you look kind of thin. You definitely don't want any canvas showing. Got a little blue in there. All right, so I think I don't have any more white showing at least. All right, let's wipe that one off and chunk it in the water. And now let's grab like a number 6 and dry it off. And I'm gonna grab mostly white with a little bit of really light blue. So some white with a little bit of light blue. And now I'm gonna add like my little foamy part. So I'm gonna skip up into my blue ocean a tad bit and throw like the top to my little foam. So like another bumpy line, which whenever you're doing this, load your brush with a lot of paint and then just be really light with it. All right. Then grab a lot of the white and light blue and we'll just fill that all in. And you can also add like that bumpy line kind of back to right here where it touches the beach too. And then we'll just kind of fill it in with a layer. Don't worry if it's a little thin because we'll come back and add some more paint to it. But just kind of grab a lot and go for it. So now we have like our little bit of like foam. Then let's skip up above that and do like our little slivers of like your little like waves crashing or like other, and don't worry about what this looks like right now because we'll come back and kind of thin it up with some other colors. But the trick is to just have a bunch of paint on your brush and then just be really light with it. So I'm just gonna throw like some little slivers, still using like the white and light blue for right now. I'm picking up a little bit of that turquoise just because it was still wet. And let's throw like a little sliver over here. And maybe like another little sliver, just to get us some light patches. And then once we have the start of that, then just grab like still some of that really, really light blue with maybe even like a little bit of pool blue. And I'm gonna bump some of that towards the top of our big frothy section. It's like up here near the top of that. Load your brush with a lot of paint. Just be really light with it. So you don't have to stab it, even if you're having a bad day. Just kind of dab it. And we'll do that like all near the top part of our frothy part. And don't worry if you get too blue, because we can come back with some white and tone it down. Bit of blue just in a few places near the very bottom too where it touches. And then let's grab still the light blues, but you could even grab like a little turquoise, so like some light blue and turquoise, and let's throw some lighter colors towards the bottom of our water. And this is where you can eat away at some of the white if it got like too thick or too perfect. So I'm gonna just eat away at my slivers a little bit. Which just kind of go with this and like play around with it, and if it looks funny you can always come back to it. It's just paint, so. But I'm gonna throw like a few lighter little sections. So the trick is to load your brush with a lot of paint and then just be real light and loosey-goosey. So I'm just kind of like barely touching it. But don't worry if you like overdo it, because you can just come back and streak back in with a little bit of another color. All right, so we have the start to that. Let's grab a little bit of dark blue and turquoise and streak a little bit of dark just in case it got too covered up there at the top. Kind of load it with some navy and then just be real light and streak a little bit back in there. Then I almost covered up my little frothy parts a little too much. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of the white and light blue again. And it's easier while it's still wet too. And I'm gonna put just a little bit more of that. I might have to come back in a minute. So you just want it kind of like not too perfect. So if yours looks kind of like straight on one side or something, just kind of take some blue and wiggle into it. And same thing with your white if it got too. You just kind of have to play with it a little bit. And it's easier whenever it's wet. So I think that's a good start to our water. We'll see how that dries. So just kind of wiggle it back. We'll definitely have to come back and throw more frothy part on there. But go ahead and wipe that one off and chunk it in the water. And now let's grab like a little bit smaller brush. So I'm gonna grab like a number 4. And I'm gonna use kind of like a sea foam, like a bluish green, more blue than green sea foam with a little bit of like a light blue. It's gonna be like the starting color of my shells. And I'm gonna start like a little bit down from like where the wave crashes, because my first one's like kind of closer to the water there. And I'm gonna start with like a long oval kind of shape for my shell. My beach is still a little wet, but that's okay. And then once you get it on there, just kind of fill it in with a thin layer. We can let it dry and then come back and add another layer to our little turtle shell. But I think that's a good start. Then I would skip down. You just want to leave a little bit of space for this first one's little legs and arms and stuff. So skip a little bit over, and I'm going to throw another one. If you ever get the chance to see baby turtles go to the ocean, it's amazing. So once you get, and you can add more turtles than me if you want. I'm just doing like 3, but you can do like a ton if you want. Okay, so that's a good start to that second shell. Then I'm gonna skip over here on the edge because it's kind of like it's just crawling into the painting. And I'm gonna throw another one over here, kind of sideways. All right, that's my plan. Uh-oh, I just might have got a little big with my shell there. Oh well, its head's gonna go there anyway. It'll be all right. Maybe this baby is a little bit bigger. It has a better start. All right. That one's kind of more egg-shaped. I guess once we fill it in, it looks a little bit more oval. Okay, so we got us a start to our shells. We'll let those dry for a second. Let's just still use this brush, but if you want to, you could use a teeny tiny brush too, like a number 1, but I'm still gonna use a number 4. Just because I like to paint with this size, but some people might wanna use a 1. And now I'm gonna throw a little head on all of them. So the little head, it kind of bumps out a little bit on the edge. But as long as you put a little something something on there, we're gonna put so much design on there that they'll look like baby turtles once we, and don't worry if it's a little thin because we can come back and hit it again. And then I'm gonna add like its little arms. So of course these are gonna be like a little bit thicker towards your shell, and then they're gonna get like smaller out towards the edge. And I'm gonna try not to do them all exactly the same. That way it looks like, you know, the turtle's kind of pushing. Real life turtle style. Then I'm gonna skip down here to the bottom and add its little, I keep calling it legs, but flippers. Y'all know what I'm saying. Don't worry that it's streaky. We'll hit these again. And then our little tiny tails, which I might actually switch out to a number 1. I'm not usually a tiny brush person, but to do that tiny little tail, I think I need it. It's like a number 1, and then I'm just gonna throw a teeny tiny little tail. Cause like on these little turtles, you would barely see it. So you don't wanna go too large and in charge. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing on the other 2. So I'm gonna add like a little head. You can kind of flare out towards the body a little. Then I'm going to add my little arms as it's pushing through the sand. Baby sea turtles are so cute. Then let's add us a little arm on this side. I'm gonna make this one kind of go down, just like I said, so they're not like, you know, perfect. Trying to make sure I'm making them long enough though. Then now we'll do like our little legs on this little baby. Can't remember how many, when I watched baby sea turtles go to the ocean, how many there were. I think there were like 67. Maybe there were more than that. Maybe there were 70 something. Since they count them. And anywhere like this leg kind of looks big, but once we come back and add a little highlight towards the bottom of everything, I think it'll be fine. And don't forget your little tiny tail. All right, and then for this one over on the edge, we'll just add its little head, which I'm kind of running into the other one here. I think I made my turtles a little bigger. So we have legs on that puppy. Now let's just add a tiny little tail. All right, so we have tails, heads. I know that it's kind of thin, but we'll let it dry for a second and then we can come back and add more. While we're waiting for it to dry, let's just wipe those off and chunk it in the water. Let's grab like a number 4, again, like a clean number 4. And we're gonna grab more of that same like creamy color with just a little bit more caramel than we used in the beginning. You just want it just a tiny bit darker because we're gonna do our little tracks. So I want it just a smidge darker because it's gonna dry even a little bit darker than it goes on. So just a tiny bit darker. And now we're gonna do little tracks. And whenever you're doing the tracks, you want them to come from your arms, your legs, your tail, because that turtle's pushing. So we're just gonna be really light. And you don't want them to look too perfect. Like sometimes you'll have the urge to kind of do perfect lines. It wouldn't really like look that perfect if it's like moving through sand. So kind of have them like a little bumpy. And then whenever you're doing the tracks, make sure you take them all the way to the bottom edge. So that way it doesn't look like your turtle just jumped up on the canvas and started going. All right, then so if it looks too perfect, you can always come back and like mess them up a little bit. But you see how I'm not doing like, you know, all the lines exactly the same or anything. Kind of get a little crazy with it. But we want some coming from our arms, our legs, even a little bit from our tails. And just make sure you take them off that bottom edge. I'm trying to make sure I have some coming from everything. Might get a little crazier in a few places, so it doesn't look too perfect. All right, that's a good start. And then with that same color, I'm gonna throw just a little bit of that right where the wave hits. So just a little bit. And then I'll just kind of wipe that one off and chunk it. And I'm gonna grab a teeny tiny brush. Again, so the number, like a number 1 or whatever little one you have. And I'm gonna grab like a darker brown with a little bit of caramel brown. So kind of a dark brown and caramel brown together. And we're gonna put just a little bit of that. Right where the wave crashes, but it doesn't have to go all the way. You can see how I didn't take it all the way and it's a little spotty. But don't worry if you get heavy with that, because we're gonna come back and touch up our froth. But let's wipe that one off and chunk it. And we're gonna give our turtles and our water just a second to dry. All right, so our turtles are a little dry. Let's just throw another layer. Let's start by throwing like another layer through our shells. So I'm gonna grab like a number 4 and like that seafoam kind of color with some blue. And I'm just gonna throw another layer just so these little guys and gals can start drying. To kind of thicken it up. All right, so we have a layer on our shells. Let's throw another layer through our bodies. So I'm gonna use mostly that navy. Again, you can have a tiny bit of turquoise with it, but mostly the navy. And I'm just gonna like throw a little bit more paint through like all of our heads, arms, legs. So you can kind of just hit the middle. You don't have to hit the whole thing this time. Just kind of the middle of it to thicken it up. Because you don't want to make them any bigger unless you didn't have yours big enough to begin with. Probably not going to hit the tails again. They're probably good. All right, so we thickened up our heads, legs, arms. Now let's wipe that one off, chunk it in the water, and let's grab like a red handle brush again. So a number 6, sorry, since I have mine labeled for classes, but like a number 6, and grab mostly the bright white. You could have a little bit of light blue, but mostly like a really bright white. And we're gonna go back into the frothy part and put a little bit more foam. So whenever you're doing this, just load your brush with a lot of paint and then just kind of be light with it, and we're just gonna bump around. Okay, so we have the start to that. I might add a little bit more white. I just don't want it to go too crazy through my water. Let's see. All right, I think that's good enough because I don't want to go too crazy with it. Then maybe a little bit more light blue near the top in a couple places, especially while that white's kind of still wet. Kind of work it into the edge. All right, then let's just wipe that one off and chunk it in the water, and let's let our little turtles dry for just a second. All right, so now let's grab a teeny tiny brush, so like a number 1, and dry it off. And let's grab some more navy. And we're just gonna skip in a tiny bit from the outside edge of our shell. So just like 1/4 of an inch, and we're gonna throw a little line. So it's just kind of like you're going right on the inside. So you just want to skip in like 1/4 of an inch. Throw a little line. Goes right on the inside. And then once you get that, then we're just gonna, through the outside ring of all of our shells, we're just gonna do some little tick marks, some little divider lines that go towards the outside. So do one, then skip like 1/4 of an inch, do another one, and we're just gonna do that all the way around. And like, it really doesn't matter the number. So don't worry if you have like less or more than me. I would just like keep skipping like 1/4 of an inch or so. And we're just gonna do that on all 3. Or however many turtles put on there. We have all of our little compartments. Then through the middle of the shell, we're just gonna throw 2 lines, like long lines. One's gonna kind of lean to the left and one's gonna kind of lean to the right. that one too much. Then I'm gonna do like 4 lines going across. So I'm gonna let the top 2 kind of lean up a little bit and the bottom 2 kind of lean down a little bit. Now, kind of just through the middle of the shell, we're gonna add a radius to like the little spots. So that means you're just gonna add a little bit of paint in all the corners of those to just kind of make your spots more rounded. Don't worry if you get heavy on the dark, because we can come back in just a second and thin it down. But you're adding like a little bit of paint through all those corners. So just a little bit of a radius through your corners to kind of make it more rounded. And we'll just do that to all 3. So add like just a tiny bit through the corners, but you're just gonna keep adding like a little bit to the corners. So it's kind of like you want like your spots in the very center to be bigger, and then they kind of get smaller on the edges. And that's going to kind of make it look more like it's round too. All right, so we got the start to that. So let's just wipe off our extra. You don't have to rinse it out, just kind of wipe it off. And let's grab some lighter blues. Kind of like if you have 2 light blues, kind of those together. And we're gonna throw just a little bit of that through the bottom of our arms, legs, and like maybe like the right hand side of your tail. So whenever you're doing this, you don't really wanna make your arms or legs any bigger. We're kind of doing it on the existing paint. So on your arms and your legs, just right towards the bottom. And then just a tiny bit on like the right hand side of your tail. And we'll just do that through all 3. So just a little bit. It's just with the really light blue. You could even use white, but I'm using like a really light blue. Then just a tiny bit on my tail. Which this isn't the best brush. Y'all probably have better ones at home. I need to get a different tiny brush. And then don't forget the last little tail. And then once you have that little highlight, then let's go ahead and kind of wipe off your extra paint. And we're gonna grab more of that shell color. So like seafoam with a little bit of pool blue. And now we can go back in, and anywhere where the navy got heavy, you can kind of round it out a little bit. So pretty much you're just adding like a little bit more paint through those little spots. And if your radius, like when you're adding the little bits to the corners, if that got thick, this is where you can kind of eat away at it. And I'm just gonna do that through just the tops. You don't really have to hit the outside little ring again unless you got heavy with like one of your little tick marks. Then you could go and eat away at it. But I'm just gonna roll with it. Now I'm on my last one, which y'all might not have even have to do this part if you're like really good at not getting too thick, but my blue got like kind of thick and too perfect in a few places, so I really had to eat away at it. So now we have like the centers kind of all thickened up. So now let's grab, got a little paint on me. So let's grab a little bit of like turquoise. And I'm gonna throw just one little sliver of turquoise through all those little sections on the outside. Maybe just right up next to like your navy. Through all the little sections, I'm gonna add a little glare. And I'm gonna add a little glare through like maybe one edge of all of the little circles that I just thickened up. So you can do like kind of like a little C shape. That's what I'm gonna do. I think that's the easiest to tell people is like do like a little C through like the bottom left or something of all those little things. But just kind of do it real quick. Just want it to be a glare. And then we'll do the same thing through these shells. So just do like a little sliver of turquoise, kind of right up next to your navy through all your little parts. And then we'll do like a little C shape. And we'll just do that on the last little turtle too. I know it doesn't seem like much, but just that little pop of turquoise kind of brings him out. Brings him out of his shell. Makes it pop. Just a little dab. Then if anything else, if we're just being like really critical, we could go back with a navy and turquoise and add just like a few little spots, like big spots. So just 3 or 4, 5 big looking spots. You just would want these to barely show up through your head. And you don't have to do this because they kind of barely show up. And then if you wanted to add another streak through your arms and legs, just to kind of make them pop. So it's mainly the navy, just with a tiny bit of turquoise, just to kind of make them pop out. Then I only see like one more part. I'm gonna add a little bit more water on there, and then I'm gonna sign this puppy. So I'm gonna grab like a number 6 again and some white. And I'm gonna add just a few more little dabs to my foam through there, just cause it was kind of all blue. So you might not have to, mine was just really blue. And I wanted like some blue more towards the top, and then some white too to kind of make it pop. All right, I think that's pretty good. So now let's just grab a teeny tiny brush again and dry it off. And now we have our little turtles on the way to the ocean. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to check us out. We're on Cox Street in Asheboro. And be sure to check out our website, www.thepreppypossum.com.